And we've kind of had to adjust. You may have seen advertisement earlier, maybe not, that we had Microsoft Teams and OneDrive. We've kind of done a little bit of shuffling here, but today's session, I'm going to break it really into two parts. The first part might be a little bit longer. It's Microsoft Teams. And I think since it's the first tool that's going to launch, that's going to be available to you all. Well, Canvas New Quizzes is available now as well, but you may have heard that New Quizzes would be replacing the quizzing engine or the quizzing tool that we have in Canvas currently. They had originally slated that, or Instructure had slated that for this summer. They have pushed that back to June of 2024. So if you were thinking you would have to move or migrate your quizzes currently to New Quizzes, we've got some time to do that. Microsoft Teams, however, will be available to everyone starting this summer. So we have some pilot courses or classes being taught with Microsoft Teams right now, mostly in our CIS department. But this tool is going to be available starting this summer, and everybody will have access summer, fall, and from here onward. So I'm going to spend a little more time on Teams just because it is something that you all can start using now and start benefiting from. Your classes can start benefiting from. And also I was thinking about, some of you may be involved in departmental sites, resources, orientation courses that are manually created courses that you may have your nursing cohorts or your dental cohorts, and you're providing orientation either to a faculty, staff, or students. And Microsoft Teams could be incorporated with those resource sites as well, or those orientation courses. So when you're thinking about Microsoft Teams, yes, it can be used in your classes, but also can be used in some of those resource courses. So we'll go ahead and start off here. So first, probably just a quick survey. If you all want to use the type chat, that's fine. How many of you all are using Microsoft Teams currently for communication with other areas of the college or with colleagues? If you just want to use the type chat, I just want to kind of we have some folks who are not using it at all yet. A lot of our faculty still aren't using it or may not be familiar with it. So I just kind of wanted to start there to see how much we need to explain about Teams. And I will say too, this is a really informal presentation session. So if you've got questions along the way, post in the type chat. Gabriel, again, will be monitoring that, or just chime in with your mic if you wanted to chime in that way. Yes, okay, so Lisa says yes, Angie, yes, frequently. Denise says some, and that's kind of been my experience. I think it's kind of hit and miss. You know, our office has been using Microsoft Teams really since it replaced Skype for Business, the chat functions. And we have set up chat teams, well, they're not actually teams, they're chat groups with our bookstore, with our scheduling folks, with DSS, and with our IT help desk. What we've found is that, especially between departments and service areas, it's been really an effective tool to help us collaborate with each other. If there's a student issue, we can jump in the team, which we're all a member of, and can chat back and forth to resolve questions or issues more quickly. So just from a departmental standpoint, it's been a real effective tool. And Microsoft Teams, what we're talking about today, and let me just flip to the next slide here. You know, we kind of already know, since you all are already using it, what it can do. It's basically for real-time collaboration, communications, meetings, file sharing. It does incorporate the virtual Microsoft Teams web conferencing. So we're in Zoom right now, but as you all may know, the Microsoft Teams includes a virtual web meeting space as well. And I wanted to show you how that works in Canvas, how it kind of brings everything together. So if you think about the discussion area in Canvas, if you think about Zoom, using Zoom in Canvas, it kind of blends those two tools or those two functions together, and Teams will incorporate the chat function, file sharing, virtual meeting space, all in one tool. So it can be very powerful. And I think with Canvas, the real benefit through Canvas that you have is once it's integrated with Canvas, all of the enrollments in your class or disenrollments in your class, really all of those folks will feed into the team, or if they disenroll, they'll drop from the team automatically. So there's no management of you having to add students or take students out as they add and drop. So if you think about it as just being your Canvas class, everything that happens in your class as far as enrollments, disenrollments, the same will happen with your team in Canvas. So you'll probably see how this works a little better once I get into it. But I will mention that we're talking about it today in terms of Canvas and the integration of with Canvas, but Microsoft Teams is managed and supported by our IT help desk. So if there are questions about how do I do a certain thing in Teams, do I need to create a team? Are there issues with Teams? IT help desk can help with that. If you're not sure if it's a Canvas issue or a Microsoft Teams issue, it doesn't matter. You can reach out to the help desk or our office, OTC Online, and we'll coordinate through Teams to figure out where the issue is. So, but IT is really responsible for Microsoft Teams and campus-wide deployment of Teams. So Teams is only available, or the team that gets created in your class is only available to you and your class. So other folks can't get in there and see it. Other faculty can't see it. It's only available to you and your students. And again, Teams has replaced Skype for business messaging, what we used previously. So I like to start with the why, because Teams isn't going to be forced or foisted upon all of you to use. The tool will be there if you want to enable it. You do not have to enable it. So one of the questions you may have, or I get asked often, is Teams virtual meeting space going to replace Zoom? Our IT department has told me, no, not currently. We have a lot of administrative areas using Zoom and will continue to use Zoom. So I've been told that Zoom, if you're comfortable with Zoom, your students are comfortable with Zoom, you can continue to use Zoom. But what I'm going to show you in a few minutes is that Teams really incorporates all of those things. You can schedule virtual meetings, you can, which actually link to your Outlook calendar, to your students' Outlook calendar. So there may be some added benefits to using Teams for virtual meetings over Zoom. And we'll show you that here in a sec. So why use Teams? Why use Teams? Why is it something that might be effective for you to use in the classroom? We always start with the why. And if this doesn't make sense for you, we'll talk about why it may not make sense here in a minute. But it's easy to use for discussion forums. It's very easy to set up. Class teams appear alongside your other work-related teams. So if you're a member of Kayak, which some of you are, you know, your team and your Kayak team will show in the teams list, and we'll look at that here in a minute. But your classroom teams will appear right below Kayak, you know, or other groups or work groups that you might be a part of. So as far as work group management, you can kind of, once you access Teams, you can see all of your departmental related teams along with your class teams. So it makes sense to kind of manage all your teams in one space. Students can create their own study groups, and groups in general, group project work. I find Canvas, and some of you are probably real familiar with setting up groups and comfortable with using groups in Canvas. I find the Canvas groups to be a bit clunky. I think students sometimes get confused on where they are at because the class looks the same as their group and there's no differentiation there. So you can set up group work areas for your students. Students can set up their own study groups and have their own virtual meetings with each other. So it kind of gives them some agency, some ability to create their own work areas, what works best for them. You'll have the files sharing, the chats, everything else there. Easy file sharing, Teams virtual meetings that we mentioned before. It integrates with the Outlook calendars. So it's a Microsoft product. So all of the Microsoft plugins and apps will work through Teams, which is a real benefit since we're a Microsoft school. We use Office 365. So the OneDrives, the forms, anything that you use in Microsoft will plug into Teams. I think one of the real powerful tools of it is that it's free mobile. So if your students download the mobile app, they can chat each other within the teams. They can, if you're sending out notifications or announcements, if you had been using your cell phone previously or using an app like Remind to message your students and have them connect more in a text-based fashion, Teams will allow you to do that without giving out your personal cell phone number or having to go to Google Voice to kind of hide your cell phone number. So there's some other benefits as far as communication there. And that kind of raises a question sometimes with faculty is, will they be able to reach me at all times? There is a feature within Teams where you can actually set quiet hours. So if you want to be offline or unavailable at certain hours of the day, you can set those quiet hours for yourself and you can communicate that to your students. So let me go to the next slide here. Why not use Teams? You know, we don't like to push tools if they're not needed to meet your goals or objectives in the class. Sometimes I think our office included, we kind of get, we start to promote tools just for the sake of the tools. I've been guilty of that myself. And if it's not going to meet a course or academic objective, you really have to think critically on whether or not it's going to be a benefit to your class. Is it going to overload your students? Our students are overloaded already with many tools that they have to use in all of their classes. So you have to consider that as kind of a cognitive overload. Maybe if you're introducing a new tool that they have to learn, they have to download another app and kind of manage communications through that tool. Probably the number one thing at this current or this point in time, discussions and collaborations, things that happen within your class team do not integrate with the Canvas gradebook. So if you're grading discussions, you want to see and grade interactions through the speed grader. Currently, there is no integration to the gradebook. So you'd have to go into Teams. If you want to use Teams for your discussion areas, you'd have to go in there and just analyze those discussions and then create a separate column in the gradebook to score those or grade those. So they are working on that, I'm told. So in the future, there might be a deeper integration with the Canvas gradebook. Other tools may satisfy what you need to accomplish. So the groups and the discussion areas, if you're comfortable with them, your students are more familiar and comfortable with them, continue working that way. There's no reason, unless on the previous slide you saw some benefits that you don't have currently with tools in Canvas. That might be something to consider as well. We also have a retention policy that we're kind of, right now, IT has it set up to where individual chats, say between you and a student, will last only 30 days. That's different than the channel conversations, and I'll explain or show you the difference in Teams here in a minute, but that's different from the channel conversations, which will last for a year. So if you're concerned about not being able to keep or store chats, maybe there's an academic, an appeal, a grade appeal or something, or a personal chat that a student sent you that's of concern. I will say that IT has access to those. You're just not going to have access after 30 days. So just be mindful of that when you're using or deciding to use this tool. Okay. Okay, so I'm gonna pull up Teams right now before we move on to quizzes. And I've got Teams for classes loaded in my sandbox here. So again, starting this summer, what you all will find, and there you'll see here in the side menu, let me see if I can enlarge this a little bit. you'll see a couple of different tools here, Microsoft Team Classes and Microsoft Teams Meetings. I wanted to explain the difference between these two because there are actually two integrations that are available currently. Microsoft Teams Classes, this is the tool that incorporates the chat function and the virtual meeting through Teams. Microsoft Teams Meetings is just the virtual meeting space. So whenever you go to add the app, you'll probably see this one. I don't know if that we're even going to load this one at the current time, even though I've got it loaded in my sandbox here. You're going to see Microsoft Teams Classes. And the way that you would get to that to enable it would be through the settings menu. So settings, navigation, it's not going to be in the default menu. It will probably be down here in the tools that you can enable. So starting this summer, you'll see that Microsoft Teams Classes in the bottom menu here. If you want to use it, you can drag it to the top, hit save. There's a few more steps to basically have it create your team. There's a button that you can push that says create team, and then you'll sync Microsoft. We'll again provide instructions on how to do that, but it's really 2 quick, easy steps to initiate the team in your class. Once the team is there, you'll see when you click on this and when your students click on this side menu link, it'll pull up your class team area. So this is what it is for this course. I changed the little icon here to be a cute little calculator, but you can change the icon to be whatever you want. You and the student can click onto it from here. I personally have Teams running all day on my desktop. So it's the same workspace really. So you don't have to click here if you already have Teams open. But when you click or your students click on this, what it's going to prompt them to do is open in a web browser or download the Windows app. They can also, if they have the app loaded on their mobile phone, they can open up their class team through their mobile device. So really 3 different ways to interact with Teams: web, desktop, or mobile. They all work the same. Students can set up notifications. So if there's activities happening within the team, they'll be notified of that. And I have the desktop version, and the desktop version really looks like this. So I've got chats here, I've got Teams here on the left side. And this is where I was talking about if you're using it for communication with your colleagues, or if you've got other programs or departments or committees that you're a member of, it's all going to be listed here in the Teams area. So I've got Teams. You can see I've got a number of teams that I'm a member of. I've got 3 different classes here. These are demo courses that I've created teams in. This is my class team right now for my Canvas course for this demonstration. You can see I've set up separate groups down here where I could put individual students. So if you had work groups where you wanted to assign 3 or 4 students in the class to each group, you can go in there and easily assign and manage add members to that group if you want to, remove members from the group, delete the group entirely. So you have the ability to do this. Students also have the ability to create their own groups, and you will see those in this area. So anything that happens in the team will happen right here. And in general, every team is created with a general area. And the general area is where you can have chats with the whole class. If you think of it, it's kind of like the Canvas discussion forum. You can add posts. You can see I've got a few examples here. I've shared a document with my colleague Jennifer. I've got a development process document that I've shared with her. I've created a virtual meeting space here. You can see when it's scheduled for, the agenda for the meeting I've posted here, and you can see it's scheduled for Thursday, March 10th. And this is where, again, if you wanted to have and set up meetings, virtual meetings, it's really quick and easy to do it through your team. So if I go up here to the top, you can see the little video camera. I can meet now with the entire team or the entire class, or with the drop down, I can schedule a meeting. And that's what I've done here. As soon as I scheduled a meeting, let me just open that up. You can set a time for your meeting. You can set a recurring meeting. You can add your agenda items here, title the meeting, and whenever you send that, what it'll do is it will post it to the general chat. It will also add it to the calendar of everybody in your team or everybody in your class. So again, if you're looking at maybe for Lisa, your DHY orientation course, you could do that with everybody and set meetings in the future or have a meet all at once. So really just an effective way to collaborate and communicate. These features up at the top, I will mention, we asked IT if we could turn these off, because in general, we'd like to see most of the class materials and content happen in Canvas. There are a number of different reasons for that, but copying content over, making sure that all of the materials are stored in Canvas is really important for grade appeals and other reasons, documentation, archives, that sort of thing. You do have the ability to upload files, create notebooks. Essentially, teams could act as a learning management system like Canvas if we wanted to do it, but we're trying to keep as much of the content and interaction happening in Canvas as possible. That might be a challenge moving forward, but that's kind of where we're at right now with it. So I'm just going to pause for a minute. I don't know if we have, Lisa asked if there are recording capabilities. Really, the Teams virtual meetings are almost identical to Zoom. There's not really much difference between them. It does record. You can share the recordings. Everything's managed again by our IT staff, so we don't have to rely on external companies really to support that. So if you've not used Teams virtual meetings, I know that our department uses Teams virtual meetings for our departmental meetings now over Zoom. It's just easier for us to get to. The conversations as a meeting occur are captured in the meeting area or the Teams area. So if we're sharing documents and so forth throughout the meeting through the chat in Teams, all of that information is collected here to where you can refer back to it. And just to kind of differentiate again between chats and channels, you can see on the left side here, these are chats. And when we're having a chat, you can message somebody, you can message a student through chat. And that conversation is going to be captured for only 30 days. In a team channel, which is the general area here, I'm under the team. This is a channel. These are all three of these are channels. But these channel chats, what occurs here within the team, will be kept for a year period. So chats 30 days, Teams chats or team channels will capture for a year period. So just something to keep in mind. A lot of our students are not even familiar with Teams yet. As we start using this in the classroom, more of our students will be downloading the mobile app. They will be able to connect to you or other faculty through Teams or even service areas. And that's something really the institution hasn't done. We've kind of collaborated with DSS and IT and the bookstore to create our own little chat areas. But hopefully, eventually, if students need help, they can reach out through Teams and get the help they need, whether it's from their instructor or from a service area advisor, et cetera. So I see Teams really being utilized more and more by faculty and staff and students moving forward. So yeah, it's just going to be more used as we move along. So let me see if there are any other questions. I don't see anybody chatting. Feel free to chime in if you have any questions at all. Again, I'm not really the expert on Teams. We've been using it for a while, and I've just kind of been learning as I go. But our IT folks, Kim Lyons in particular, they can answer any questions you might have about a team. So teams are created automatically whenever you click those first few buttons in the setup. Your team will appear in your Teams area automatically. These other teams that have been created, like the kayak group, some of these committee teams, IT is created manually since they're not tied to Canvas. So if you think that a team might be useful outside of Canvas, you can request that from IT and they can set that up if you wanted to have kind of a departmental team, if you will. So I really see it being an effective tool to help colleagues and departments stay in touch with one another. So I hope that kind of explained how it can be used. We're still kind of working through some of the logistics. One of the questions that has come up as some of our CIS folks have been using it is what happens with the team when Canvas is, when the class ends. And right now, I think IT policy is that they'll go in and actually delete the teams that were created for a certain semester. You actually have the ability to go into your team at the end of the semester and delete the team. But right now, there's no automated process that's just going to remove that access to students. So hopefully we can have that automated soon. So, but it also might be another way that folks within a cohort, especially, whether it's nursing or dental, can stay in touch with each other even after a class is ended. That might be a discussion for another time.
So I wanted to ask, I know a lot of students like using OneNote to take their class notes.
Mm-hmm.
So I know we can use OneNotes at in the top bar in
Yes.
Teams. So is that
Mm-hmm.
going to work with one or both of the integrations?
One or both of the integration. Which integrations?
The Canvas integrations. I guess I figure the meetings one wouldn't do it, but the team chat and meetings would do it. Maybe I've got them mixed up.
That's a good question. I think that the OneNote, again, we haven't really set any hard rules on using OneNote through Teams. It might be something that we want to look at again, just putting most of the content within Canvas. So if you're creating a OneNote that you want to share with the class, it might be, you could obviously put it here in Teams under the class notebook, but it might be better to post that link also in Canvas. If you're going to do it in one place, do it for sure in Canvas. But yeah, you could integrate it here. You could add your OneNote here to the class notebook. You can see that the little plus sign up here, you can connect to other tools right here. So if you wanted to add more OneNotes, an Excel document, again, anything Microsoft related, you can definitely put there and add as many tabs across the top as you want. So maybe you'll have an Excel spreadsheet. If you want to have a Microsoft form, maybe you have a survey for your students to take. You could definitely embed those here. It's going to be important for you to let students know, because we're trying to make it easier to find things rather than more difficult. And if you can tell them explicitly, we're using Teams for this. And I know that Tiffany Ford in her CIS classes does that. She does it in a welcome video where she's providing an orientation to the course. She said, we're going to be using Teams for this explicitly, for communication, collaboration. If you need to reach out to me, you can use email, but you can also Teams me. So just being clear on where students need to go to find what they need to learn in your class. I don't know if that answered your question, Gabriel.
Nice. It's a good point. It's important to make sure the things are accessible.
Yeah. And just trying to, when you think about all of, and we see it daily here, when you think about all of the classes or courses that are out there and available to students, they may be taking 4 or 5 courses, and they're getting back to that cognitive load. They may be interacting with 4 or 5, sometimes more different tools, whether it's a publisher integration, whether it's Miro, Flipgrid, Canvas, Zoom, Teams, it can be a little overwhelming, and just trying to keep things simple. If it serves your purposes instructionally, trying to keep things as simple as possible is usually best course of action. So Well, that's Teams in general. Again, we will have this available in the navigation to enable. We'll have more documentation on this as well for the rollout of that. So step-by-step instructions. We've actually created that for our new quizzes, which I'll get into next. Gabriel set up a nice web page for us with some resources to new quizzes. We'll have something similar for Teams once we're a little closer to the summer semester, but look for that, and we'll cover that at that time. So let me get back to Canvas new quizzes. So how are we doing on time? Yeah, about half, so that's good. This may not take as long. As I mentioned, Canvas new quizzes, if you joined late, Canvas new quizzes was slated to replace classic quizzes, the quizzes that we currently use in Canvas, this summer. There are a couple of reasons why they've pushed it off to the summer of 2024. Namely, there are some migration issues. If you're using question banks or test banks, some of those test banks and classic quizzes don't really port over as you would expect to Canvas new quizzes. They're working on that to make it a more seamless migration. But there are some new quizzing types that I wanted to point out and show you. If you don't want to use new quizzes right now, you do have the option to use new quizzes, but if you don't want to use them, you definitely don't have to use them, but there are some question types that you might find applicable to your instruction. One other thing about new quizzes right now is that Proctorio, if you're teaching an online class and you're using Proctorio, Proctorio is not compatible with new quizzes at this current time. I just reached out to our instructor rep who said that that compatibility should be in effect before mid-year. So we'll know more once they announce that. Proctorio interestingly said that new quizzes, they do support new quizzes. We found out quickly that that doesn't work. So we're waiting for our instructor at Canvas to tell us, give us the green light to say that that's operational. So if you're planning to use Proctorio, you might hold on new quizzes, but if you wanted to do new quizzes, it is available to you. I'll show you how to enable new quizzes right now. You have the choice of doing new quizzes or classic quizzes or both. So there might be a reason that you want to try it. This will be the tool in the future that we will be using. So if you want to become familiar with it right now, you can kind of see how it works, and even poke around with it, kick the tires a bit, and see if some of these new question types will work for you. So speaking of question types, I'll show you each one of these new question types. Really, these are the four that are added over the classic quizzing. There's some other benefits, including printing. So you'll be able to print a quiz. So if you wanted to hand out a quiz in the classroom, you can print your quiz from Canvas using new quizzes, with or without the answer keys. So maybe you have a quiz, students have taken it, and you want to print it with the answer key to give back to them in the class. You could do that as well, and I'll show you how that works. So let's go into, I'll pull up my demo course here again, and we'll get into what that's all about. So first of all, new quizzes by default right now, and probably won't be turned on for all courses until it's official that we are moving to new quizzes, and everybody's going to have to start using it. But you can turn on new quizzes right now in any one of your courses. It is a course by course basis, so you have to do it on any course that you want it to be on or to be available. So to get to turn it on, you would again go to Settings and go to the Feature Options tab. If you're not familiar with this area, there's some other tools, and whenever they turn on tools for testing or to try, this is where those tools are. So if you want to preview any of those options that are available to you, you can see right now these tools are disabled, but you can actually go in and enable any one of them. Well, that one's permanently disabled. Some you do have the ability to turn on, some you don't. New quizzes is one that you do have the ability to turn on. You can see I have that enabled here. So to enable a tool, you just click on it, select enable, and it's good to go. Until it's enabled, though, you'll only have access to the classic quizzes or the current quizzes that we're all familiar with or have been using. But now that I've enabled new quizzes, you can go to the quizzes area. And when I go up here to add a quiz or create a quiz, it's going to ask me, do you want to create a classic quiz or create a new quiz? If it's not enabled, it's not gonna give you these options. So just know that. And I've got a couple here. One is a classic quiz and one is a new quiz. And you can kind of tell the difference between the two. And this is going to be helpful for us in support. Like I said, you can run a classic quiz and a new quiz in the same course. And the way we can tell a difference is when they're published, this one's kind of just an outline. This one's a solid green. So this is new quiz, classic quiz. That's the way we can tell the difference. And that's the way you can tell the difference as well. So the new quiz is actually, I'm sorry, I'm just looking at the chat. I saw something pop in. So for my B block courses, I can use the new quiz correct. Yes, you can, Denise. Yes, if you enable it. In fact, you can enable it. It doesn't have to be at the start of the semester. You can enable it anytime and start using new quiz. So good question. So the new quizzes is actually, and technically, I don't know that you probably need to know this, but I wanted to explain that it's an external tool, whereas classic quizzes was a part of the original build of Canvas. It was fully integrated into Canvas. What new quizzes does is it's basically, if you think of it as an app that plugs into Canvas, that will allow Instructure and Canvas to kind of develop new tools, even new quiz engines in the future, and just pull out the old one and plug in the new one as things change. And in that way, it's not fully integrated yet with the Canvas learning management system as classic quizzes is currently. That's why one of the question banks and the migration is not seamless at the moment. But you can actually migrate a classic quiz over to a new quiz if you wanted to see how that works. Just be mindful that the question banks won't be question banks when they migrate if you're using question banks. So to do that with the classic quiz, if I go over here to the three dots, click on that, you can see there's an option to migrate. And what that'll do is it'll basically turn that quiz into a new quiz to where you could add those other question types that I mentioned earlier. So if you want to experiment with that, you can do that. If you've got a sandbox where you wanted to just try it out and not worry about messing something up, we can create you a sandbox where you can play away. So I think most of you probably have sandboxes where you can play with that. While I'm here, you might see a few other features. If you're not familiar with those, I just wanted to point them out. If you're sharing quizzes with other faculty, you can actually send this quiz to another user. If you want to copy this quiz to another course without having to do a whole course copy process, you can click on copy and select a course to copy it to that you have access to. So just know that those options exist. It's a fairly new feature that those were added. And you'll see that this drop-down list for this classic quiz is just slightly different than this one for new quizzes. Everything's pretty much the same except for the build and duplicate. So the duplicate feature will let you just make a copy of that quiz. So if you're wanting to keep the same format, maybe you want to keep some of the same questions with the exception of a few different new questions. If you're just kind of requizzing, the duplicate feature is a feature of new quizzes that you have access to, but you've got those other ones as well. Any questions on that? We'll get into, I've created this, I created this new quiz this morning. I've played around with it a little bit, and pretty exciting features coming with the new quizzes. So let's just jump into that, and I'll show you what those are. First of all, when you get into a new quiz, it's kind of backwards. You know, you don't see the questions up here. You don't see, how do I add questions? And that was kind of confusing to me from the start, it allows you to set up all your points and display and all of the settings for the quiz first, which is kind of backwards to me. I'd expect to set up the questions and then maybe set this up later. What you have to do, and I don't know why they put this button at the bottom, you have to go in here to build. And build just means create your quiz or edit your quiz if you've already created it. So if I go into build, I have created a few questions, a few different types of questions. You can preview the quiz up here on the right. So after you've built some questions, you want to see how it looks to students, you can preview it, which is great. You can see you have item banks, which is different. If you've created item banks and new quizzes, those item banks will be available to you currently. And like I said, eventually, hopefully those classic quiz item banks will be available as well. You can see there's a few other things up here up at the top. So where you'd give students more time on tests, you've got the moderate feature. There's some reporting features, so outcome analysis, quiz and item analysis, if you want to see if certain questions are more effective than others. Pretty much the same as what classic quizzing provided to us. Settings, you can shuffle questions, shuffle answers one at a time. Some of the usual suspects as far as classic quizzing goes are here, so you can turn those on. This is where once Proctorio is available for new quizzes, there'll be a toggle for Proctorio here as well. So this would be the area that you would enable the exam for Proctorio. One feature, just getting back to Moderate, that I wanted to point out that I was reviewing recently is that for accommodations, you can set multiple attempts, you can extend time as we always have done for students on an individual basis through this little button over here. But one new feature that New Quizzes provides is you can set up a rule so that if you want this individual student, Sandra, to get additional time, you can set additional time, a time multiplier if you want to give maybe twice as long for an exam. You can set this rule, and what that does is it'll apply to every new quiz in your course for Sandra for the duration of the course. So you don't have to go into every quiz, and if Sandra needs extra time on every quiz, you moderate individually. You can do that for every quiz in the course. So kind of a new feature that kind of those accommodation settings apply to the student throughout the course, which is kind of handy. So let me get back to the question types. Again, I'll go back to build. You can see that I have, we're just going to cover these in order. We have a hotspot question, and basically the hotspot question allows you to upload an image and designate an area within the image that you want students to be able to answer or provide an answer for. So in this case, I have click on the right atrium. I have used the tool. Let me go into the edit screen here for this question. I have used this polygon tool to outline this area that I want students to click on to answer the question appropriately. You could do that in any area of this image. You can do it as a circle, you can do it as a square. The polygon works because this is kind of a abnormal shape. So I've just outlined this area. Students can click anywhere within this space to be able to answer the question correctly. And let's just go and preview that and see what that looks like. So this is what it looks like to the student. So you can say, click on the right atrium. If the student clicks over here, that's not going to be right. If I click here, I can submit that. And I know I'm not going to answer the other ones. Correct answer, because I selected within that space. So that's kind of really cool if you're having students identify certain areas within an image. I pulled this image, by the way, off the internet. I just looked for a heart diagram without labels, and that's what I loaded up. So it's really cool to be able to have students pick certain areas within an image. The other question type, I'm going to exit this, that I think you'll find really, really exciting, it is exciting to me, is the stimulus question. So what the stimulus question does is it will let you pose a question. There's different ways to format this. You could have the questions down below, or you can have them on the right side as I have here. But as you can see, I've got my prompt here for the question. I've embedded a video that I want students to watch. And then it segments all of the questions here on the right side. And you can see as I scroll through the questions, all of the questions pertain to the stimulus question. So if I want them to answer several questions on a topic, on a video, on an image, you can put that here on the left side and then have them answer any of the question types on the right side. And within this stimulus, I've embedded just a couple other examples of some of the new features and new quizzing that you can add, either as a stimulus or separately. So if you wanted to, of course, do a true false, you can have a true false question here. You can have matching, and you can have categorization. And I wanted to show you what this looks like through the preview. So let me go back to preview. Down here, some may argue that 70s music is the best of all time. Yeah, I'll just answer true because there's some good music from the 70s. But you can see the matching here. You can see the things that I need to match, and you can select from a number of options. So you can add some detractors here too. So you can have the matching number for all 4 of these categories, or you can add distractors, ones that you may want to throw in to to throw students off. Not that maybe you're having a bad day and you want to throw them off, but they're there if you want to add more, you can add more. So you can just go ahead and answer these. I'm answering them arbitrarily. I know I'm going to get some of these wrong. I'll probably get some of those wrong. But the last one is actually ordering. So if you wanted to have students reorder these in the order that they were released, it's drag and drop. So it's kind of an interactive type of question type. So those are the main ones. You've got hotspot, stimulus, and then you've got categorization and ordering are the 4 main new types that you would get for new quizzing.
Denise Bear is asking if you can have more than one image in the hotspot question type.
More than one image. I don't believe so. I tried to do, let me exit preview here and just try that. If I go to edit, I think it's just one image at a time.
Can you do
one
one
hotspot selection? Yeah, I think it's just one at a time. That's a good question though. I haven't tested that. There might be a way to do that. Let me just see if there's any other options. I'm not seeing a lot of options here.
I'd love to hear from Denise. What circumstances would you want to have that?
I would have wanted like a correct, say like a correct situation versus an incorrect situation, just to make up something. Choose which one, but I guess I could just make one image of the 2 and then do the polygram and run it. I was just curious if I could have 2.
Yeah, I don't think there is a way. I think you'd have to just create another, you could duplicate the question, and if you needed to.
Yeah, because like in this, I would say, this is a lung of a cigarette smoker, or is this a lung of a cigarette smoker?
Right.
Choose which one. But
right.
I would just probably have to make it into one image somehow.
Right.
And then make it pretty.
Yeah, good question. The stimulus one, if you're talking about one thing and you want them to answer in a number of ways, you can obviously add as many stimulus questions that you want to add here on the right side. Maybe it's a paragraph, maybe it's a reading that they have to answer several different things for. There can be essay questions in here, all of the various question types. And just speaking of the question types, you see this little plus plus sign. Once you've created your quiz, you can go back and add questions in between the questions. You don't have to drag and drop them. Anywhere you see the little plus sign, you can add a question. If it's going to be the end of this quiz, you just go here and you can see all of the question types that you can choose from. All of the one. Yeah.
On your hotspot, I noticed you had one of the choices was like what did it say? Did it say on something about the calculator?
Right.
Does it automatically bring up the calculator inside this question? Or
It will, if you've got it turned on, it will show the calculator. So there's
Okay.
two different, a basic or scientific. By default,
Okay.
no, it does not. You'd have to show that.
So I have to pick that. Well, that's per question, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Right. Yep.
We do a lot of statistics. I was just curious.
So that's really the new things in quizzes, and new quizzes. You also have, as I mentioned, the ability to print. So here's a print blank quiz, print with key. So there might be some situations where you want to do that. I just printed out this quiz, and I don't know if you all can see that, but it's, it'll show question by question. You'd have to, I guess, be mindful of the fact that there's no hotspot with a with a printed question or printed quiz, but also the video embedded here. So it will only work with certain question types, obviously. But yeah, that's basically it. Any questions on that?
No, some of those are kind of exciting.
Yeah, and like I said, you can
Yeah.
start playing with it now. If you want to just do a test quiz,
Right.
yeah, just kind of set it up, see how it works. I know that some folks have been using it with success, but again, you can't use Proctorio. There's some limitations with the test banks, so that's gonna.
I can see setting up my syllabus quiz and it's a little more fun.
Oh yeah, absolutely, sure. The other thing I didn't mention about Teams that is kind of fun too is you have the option to add GIFs and emojis. I know our department likes to have a little fun with that. So I think students, unlike the static kind of, I don't know, I wouldn't call it dreary, but kind of boring Canvas discussion forums, especially if you're having students introduce themselves. I mean, there's just some other options that you have there that you don't have through Canvas. So just something to consider.
I see Lisa is asking, can you explain the outcomes linked?
Good question. So currently OTC does not use outcomes. Outcomes meaning, we can link to institutional learning outcomes, course outcomes. There is a whole mechanism and tool in place or engine in place within Canvas where you can define outcomes for a program. You can define outcomes for the institution, etc. We could build all of that out in Canvas or by department or program and link individual quiz questions or quizzes or assessments to those outcomes. Currently, like I said, OTC does not use outcomes in Canvas. It has been a discussion that our office has had with Dr. Weaver recently to say, hey, is this something that could be used to kind of ensure that we're meeting outcomes, whether it be through questions or individual assessments. So that may be topic for discussion that will continue. If there are benefits that you see within your programs, yeah, nice for accreditation for sure. That would show that alignment specifically to individual assessment items or activities. Yeah, it can be used in that way. In fact, we sat through a webinar where another institution was using, I think it was K-State, KU. Probably shouldn't get those mixed up, but yeah, I think they're using outcomes in Canvas pretty heavily. So there are models out there that use them. So, as we kind of tighten up assessment and accreditation and things like that, there's no reason that your program could not use them independently. So if you're interested in outcomes, I know Jackie, Amy, Jennifer here in the office are pretty familiar with how those work. We just haven't used it or adopted it institutionally.
I see Angie is asking about proctoring. with new quizzes?
So again, we're waiting on Instructure to give us the green light to say that Proctorio is supported. Right now, it is not. We were told by Proctorio that it was supported. Some of our nursing faculty started using Proctorio with their students, and we found out that, and I don't know if you were part of that, Angie, but yeah, I think you were part of that, sorry, where it was kind of problematic. We had some students that just couldn't, it just locked up and it hung when they tried to take their exams through Proctorio. So we were told it would be available in the first quarter. Now Instructure is telling us that it's going to be mid-year. We really don't know yet on when. But as soon as it is available, trust me, we will be letting folks know. I kind of sent an email to, I did send an email to Dr. Light just to let him know that we did have some issues with that. And I'm sorry that it kind of hung some of our students up when they were trying to take their exams, but we were told it would work, and it just did not. So something to keep in mind too with any of these new tools that we adopt, even Teams. That's why we're testing or allowing Dr. Ford and some of her faculty to just kind of test it, kick the tires for us, make sure that there aren't some things that we're missing that we should probably address. So far, actually, I think Dr. Ford and some of her faculty were using Teams in their courses before there was an integration with Canvas. So outside of Canvas, they were using it, and they've just found it very, very effective. It again gives students some choice on where they can meet, how they communicate. So, but yeah, we definitely want to test things out before we go full launch. Great. Any other questions? I know we're right at 4. I kind of got through all of it, surprisingly. Well, great. Again, we'll provide more information on the Teams deployment closer to summer. So be looking for that. One other thing that I wanted to plug, and if you haven't gone to our website, go to, I found the easiest way to get to KaiTalk, and KaiTalk is a resource. Maybe Gabriel can talk a little bit more about this, is to go to OTC EDU and search KaiTalk. And Gabriel, do you want to give a plug for that real quick on what that is?
Sure. So KaiTalk is a resource repository. In essence, it's a website we set up with all of the resources that we support and that we've made for instructors. So how it could be useful to you, if you like, is you can actually get to some new quizzes resources there. Easy way to do that, if you hit that search bar, you can type in quiz or new, and it'll there you go. It'll get you to the new quizzes there. And so it's full of topics, everything from Proctorio to new quizzes to pedagogy on recording class videos. Just about any resource you might want for teaching is in there somewhere. Number one thing is helping you find it.
It's kind of a search within our OTC search, but more related to pedagogy and just instructional practice.
Mm-hmm. You can actually search using the OTC search bar, the one at the top. That'll bring up stuff in KaiTalk. And so if you're used to searching up your educational resources and tutorials on Google, this is catered specifically to OTC stuff and the version of Canvas that we have. So a lot of it is
that's OTC. Human resources. It didn't get to KaiTalk. Here we go.
There's KaiTalk, and there's also the video and HyFlex engagement. So yeah, it's got lots of the Canvas courses, the CARES courses that we've delivered in there as well. So lots of pre-digested, easy to use materials.
And when we do load up instructions for Teams, any other resources, you can go right to KaiTalk and just type in, again, Teams for Canvas or Teams, and it will bring up all the related things related to that. So really good resource. Gabriel put that together. I think it's It's fairly new, but hopefully you all can use it and benefit from it. Great. Well, thank you all for attending. Appreciate you being here. And if you have any questions at all, feel free to email me directly, whether it be on Canvas Teams or new quizzes. Happy to help. Anybody in our office obviously can help, but just reach out to me and we'll go from there. But hope you have a great rest of the day.
You too. Thank you.